What's up, everyone? Welcome back. My name is Mike Peck, and this is 12 and 12, a year-long challenge throughout 2025. We're all going to be building out 12 different applications, one for each month, using no-code and low-code tools. Doing a bit of a different recording here, kind of end of the day, so I got my kind of launch setup on here. But I wanted to jump on to talk a little bit about the first set of tools that I outlined in the last installment of this series, where I talked about what are called custom GPTs. These are sort of what I think of as like a foundational tool that you can use to start learning how to build applications. And there are options for building custom GPTs in platforms like ChatGPT, even in Google Gemini. I believe they're called GEMs. But there's also options that are off platform, like, for example, Chip and Poe. And these two applications, I think, are really great examples of how you, or myself included, as a person who doesn't know how to code, can get started with building your own custom tools to solve some of your own challenges you might have in your classroom or your school. And the nice part about Chip and Poe is that you can use these tools with or without a subscription to the platform. So the benefit here is that they do use things like ChatGPT behind the scenes, but they allow you to embed these tools pretty much anywhere you want, whether it's using it as a standalone website or putting it on your different website that you've built altogether. So before we jump in and actually take a look at how to build these, I just want to talk a little bit about what GPTs are. So if you're kind of new to this space, what are GPTs? They are custom AI-powered tools that are really tailored for specific tasks or purposes. And so you could kind of think of them as like fine-tuned models, whereas, like, for example, ChatGPT is sort of like a wide open space that you can ask it virtually any question, and it'll be able to give you a pretty good answer. When we talk about custom GPTs, these tools are better at answering questions or responding in sort of defined areas. And so you can give it specific instructions, data sets, personality settings to be able to provide more tailored responses, as opposed to interacting with a model like a Gemini or a ChatGPT, where it's sort of like you have to prompt it to get to the end result that you want. So the idea here is that these can be used in instances where there may be kind of a lot of repetition or very defined data set. And so you might see them in customer support, education, content creation, and automation, just as a few areas. Sort of the simple way to think about this is that they really give you control over how the chatbot behaves, responds, and even integrates with other tools. So these can be very, very useful, particularly when you have defined tasks at hand. And so before we jump into actually looking at one of these examples, and I'm going to be looking at Chip today, one of the things that I wanted to give everybody was a sense of like what you might want to focus on building a GPT for. Building a custom GPT isn't for every solution. You want to think about tasks that are time consuming and repetitive. As examples, it might be developing an FAQ, automating a certain task or a schedule. As a classroom teacher, generating lesson ideas might be time consuming. Doing the research, coming up with new ideas, iterating can take a lot of time. And so having a tool that really can satisfy a specific task and help you sort of accelerate your work is really, really useful. You can consider different roles, whether it's tutors, an assistant, a customer support, a productivity manager, something you want to think about. What is the personality of that GPT? And then the other thing I always recommend doing is whether or not you're creating just a custom GPT, it's always useful to start with a AI model, to have a conversation to figure out what you might want to do, or how to, like, a better way to put it is, how do you refine your idea? And so that can save you a lot of time, is just having a conversation with an AI model before actually going and building something. It's sort of like the brainstorming process, if you will. And so you can look in other places to find ideas. Oftentimes, I think of a really good way to, like, building tools is if you have a specific pain point or a problem. That's a good place to find if there's a solution available to you. So in other words, my problem is generating new lesson ideas can be really challenging for me because I only have so much time in the day, but I have lessons that are okay, but maybe I want to like improve them. But it takes a lot of time and sort of like mental horsepower, if you will. Building a custom GPT in this scenario might be really useful. And that's the example I'm going to actually run with today. You want to think about the tone and personality of the chatbot. Who are the intended users? The one thing I always like sort of tacking onto this conversation or any conversation about AI is always think about, what is the least amount of data necessary for this bot to gather? Because we want to make sure that we're not giving away too much information or privacy related information to an AI model. So in cases where you're thinking about including student names or data, it's best to avoid those types of situations. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the privacy of our students and even your own personal information as well. All right, so we've had a chance to kind of get a sense of what custom GPTs are. We have some ideas on how we might start with thinking about building them and where they might be useful. So let's actually take a look at how these are set up before we start that dialogue with ChatGPT to actually build our first application. All right, so here I am. I just logged into Chip, and Chip is one of a few different examples of custom GPT builders. Another one that I've used before is Poe, but I really like Chip because it's a very easy to use interface. It actually will give me overview of like information on who's using my GPTs. It also will, it gives me sort of like a very structured layout for how I can create them, and I can even see and test them before I put them into production. So once I've logged in, and you can log in with a Google account, get started for free, which is really awesome too. I'm going to go to my apps, and here you can see some apps I've already built, but I'm going to go ahead and build a new one. So I'm going to click on New GPT, or New App rather. And here you're going to see the interface load up for me, and I'm going to move myself over here so I'm not in the way. And on the left-hand side, you can see you do have the setup guide. There's also a style guide. So if you want to, style your custom GPT in some way, you can. But you have some things like the name of the application, description, a prompt. You can see the model. Down here, if I click on the model dropdown, with the model, you can choose from different models to use to sort of power the GPT. And so depending on what type of thing you're asking the GPT to do, you may select a different model. I'm just going to stick with 4.0 for now because it's good for a wide variety of tasks. Now I skipped over this, but I should come back to our prompt. And so when it says prompt, what we're doing here is we're actually creating a set of instructions that the GPT is to follow when it responds. So you're sort of giving it a role, you're giving it responsibilities, you're being specific with the tasks. And so when you're thinking about creating a GPT, being very specific with the outcome leads to a better output. If I just say, go ahead and make me a lesson plan, it may not do a very good job of providing me an answer I'm looking for. But if I give it a very structured response here, it can give me a much better output. So we're going to actually work on this in ChatGPT in a moment, but I just want to show you the rest of the setup here before we jump over. Our conversation starters are really useful. You may or may not use these often if you use an AI model, but having conversation starters is really helpful when you are giving this GPT to someone else to use. So if I'm going to share this with other teachers or with students or other people, having conversation starters can give people an idea of like what they might ask this model because they may not know unless you're very clear with your description. And so this is a good way to help sort of jumpstart people in thinking about how they might use the tool. The input text is just what you're seeing over here on the right-hand side. And so as we update this, this preview over here will update too, which is really nice. So I can kind of see that in real time. And this is one of the sort of the killer parts of building a GPT. It's the new source. So if I click on new sources, you have all kinds of information here that you can add, including URLs, documents, resources, YouTube videos. you can build a GPT that is trained on all these different types of resources. And so I'm going to show you an example of what I might do in here in a few moments. Last but not least, we have our actions. And so when you click on actions, this is the type of things you get to input into the GPT. So as a user, I could either file upload, create an image, use image recognition, do URL retrieval, or even browse the web. You can turn these on or off at your discretion. It really depends on what the nature of your GPT is. So now that I've seen my my options here, now I have an idea of what's going to be required, the information going to be required to actually build this. And so I'm going to actually head over to ChatGPT, and I'm going to get started with a conversation here. So my role, I'm going to play the role of a 7th grade social studies teacher. So before I stepped into my technology role, that was how I started in education pretty much. And so I'm going to actually play that role here, and we're going to build a GPT for my classroom. So I'm going to say I am a 7th grade teacher and would like to build a custom GPT to help me improve my boring lessons. Okay. Can you help me? All right, cool. So we're gonna get started. And one of the things that I think is really important to do too is, like, when you use these AI models, it's always good to ask questions, because they will, or it will, respond to you in a way that maybe asks more questions. You can always say, please clarify if you have more questions for me. So down here, I've got my response, and here's what it's sort of thinking about. It says building custom GPT. Here are some different approaches. So all different ideas. Here it's actually giving me some code, which we're not actually building this. So I'm going to say no. This isn't really helpful for me. So at this point, I'm going to start having a conversation here to help focus in on what specifically I want to do. Okay, so refining my instructions here. All right, so here we have a much better set of instructions, and this looks pretty good. So what I can do, just to kind of cut to the chase, you can spend time actually, going through this and in encouraging, or not encouraging, but enhancing the output through a conversation with the AI model. But this is good enough for now, and so I'm going to go ahead and copy this here, and I'm going to go ahead and grab all of that text, and I'm going to bring it over to my GPT. So I'm going to call this my lesson enhancer. Okay. And here's where I put my description. Again, if you're going to be distributing this to other people, you may want to incorporate some very clear instructions here. If you're using it for your purposes, you may not need, really detailed instructions. But I'm just going to put a quick improve my lesson, we'll say your lesson by making it more engaging. Okay, great. So here's where I'm going to put my prompt. And the one thing that I really like about Chip too is that they've built this for people if you're still learning how to kind of build these tools in a way that's makes it a really good outputs. They actually give you the tools here. There's a little wand you'll see. If you click on the wand, you can actually input your idea for a prompt here, and it will kind of turn it into a prompt that the AI model will do really well with. So it'll give you very step-by-step instructions on how to behave and how to act. And so even if you're not even sure where to begin, Chip gives you tools to be able to quickly stand up this application in a way that doesn't require a lot of effort. All right, so we have context here. The model's all set up, or the instructions are all set up. The output's included in there too as well, which was at the very end. So it has very structured outputs. It should give me a revised lesson plan. And down here, I might include some conversation starters like, I need to improve my lesson on ... and help me brainstorm some ideas for a lesson on... Okay, and as I add these conversation starters, they automatically appear here. I'm going to go ahead and add a new source of information. And again, I can add pretty much anything into this as like a sort of a set of information to train it. As a teacher, I might include my slide decks, or maybe in this case, I'm going to choose my curriculum. So I'm going to go ahead and add a document for 7th grade social studies curriculum. And now it's going to upload. This is a pretty big document, but it's now going to be sort of ingested by the AI. And as I give responses or ask questions, it will actually reference this when it responds to me and my inquiries. So I could add additional sources. I'm going to leave it with just that one for now, and you'll see it's loading there. In terms of actions, I'm going to leave them as they are also. No changes there. And now I can go ahead over here on the right-hand side and start having a conversation with the AI. So can you help me create a geography lesson on the 5 themes? All right. So here we go. So it's going to start having a conversation with me. Here's the core objectives. All right. And you'll see that it did give me right away. Sorry, it's still giving me the response here. But you will see that like up here, we started seeing some of this hands-on work. So we're talking about the 5 themes in the context of project-based learning, which I wanted something more engaging. We have inquiry questions to go along with that. And so, in terms of like the lesson structure, I asked for a PBL type lesson, and here it gave me some, very specific outputs that included that. So you could, of course, use this. You can continue the conversation here, but just for time's sake, one of the things I'll mention is that it's always good to test. You always want to test these things before you distribute them and use them. One other thing to note too, as well, is you can always go back and fine tune and tweak or make changes to these applications once you've built them. So the nice part is it's not like set in stone. You can actually iterate on these tools as you continue to find them more or less useful. And so that's all it takes to stand up your first application. The last thing we have to do before we go ahead and kind of close out for today is once we created it, we want to share it and use it. In Chip, it's super easy. So if I click on the share button in the top center, you have 3 different ways, or 4 different ways really, to share it. If you click on share link, here I can just copy this URL. And now that I've copied it, go ahead and open it in a new window. And here we go. You can see our new application. And so now I've built my first tool. And so, kind of going back to what we were talking about before, think of tasks that are repetitive, that you do often, some things that, perhaps take you a lot of time and effort. And if you're able to break down those projects or jobs that you have into, very clear tasks, this is something that AI is quite good at. And so thinking through sort of the lens of being task oriented, if you have things that you're doing over and over again, custom GPTs can be a great way for you to save some time and even create some new potential avenues for working, or rather for some new potential ideas or pathways to doing your work. And so bringing AI to the table is really useful because you never know what you never know what you might find. So so that pretty much wraps it up. Now, if you've used Chip here, the platform is pretty similar to just about any of the other custom GPT builders. And so You can check the other ones out if you want to, but certainly recommend checking out Chip. It's a really awesome tool for you to get started. And like I said, the nice part is as we move forward into this series, you can actually incorporate Chip's tools into other applications that you're building. So it's like a really good foundational kind of approach to understanding how to build your own apps, because we have great structure. As we move into the world of no code or tools that are generating applications through natural language, having an idea how these AI models think is a really helpful way to improve your output in terms of building things. And so just to sort of wrap things up, I wanted to close with some do's and don'ts. And so, don't overcomplicate the bot's functionality. Focus on a couple specific tasks. The less kind of noise you have around the task, the better it will be. Don't store or share sensitive data. Don't ignore edge cases. So situations where things don't have a solution can be a great place for you to build an app. Don't deploy without testing. Very, very important. Always try it first before you send it out. Keep it task-based and efficient. Prioritize privacy and security. Make sure you make designs very clear and simple, especially if you're sharing it with others. And the last thing, as I mentioned, test, iterate, and improve. Next time around, we'll start looking at some of the AI-assisted code generation tools, which are kind of the ones that I have in the middle there. One of my favorites, Lovable. We'll take a look at that, and we're going to look at all the different potential that these tools hold for yourself, both personally, but also in the field of education. So hopefully you enjoyed kind of this walkthrough. I'm also going to be sharing a couple apps that I've built using Chip to catch up for January and February, since I missed both of those months. But would love to hear from you if you have thoughts, questions. Keep the conversation going. Until next time, see you around and happy building.